The snow had teeth that night, not soft flakes drifting from the sky, not winter as I had known it growing up, but a blizzard that clawed straight through fur, skin, and bone. The kind of cold that wanted you dead. The kind of cold my mate had counted on. I stumbled through it anyway. My vision was a blur of white and darkness, wind slicing across my cheeks like knives. Every breath burned. Every step was a battle. But the tiny bodies tucked beneath my cloak, two trembling wolf pups, kept my legs moving even as the storm tried to swallow us whole. "Just a little farther," I whispered, though the pups could barely hear me. Their small whimpers vibrated against my ribs, weak, frightened. "I won't let you freeze. Not you." My voice cracked. Everything else had already cracked long before the blizzard did its work. I didn't know where I was going, only where I could not remain. Bloodthorn territory was behind me, the place that had been my home, the place where I had served as Luna, the place where my mate, Alpha Darius, had marked me, used me, then turned on me the moment these pups were born. His words still echoed in my skull, crueler than the storm. "You betrayed me. These pups aren't mine. You think I'll raise another man's bastards?" But the pups were his. I knew it. My heart knew it. He didn't care. Accusation turned to rage. Rage turned to violence. Violence turned to banishment. And banishment in Bloodthorn was simply another word for execution. They cast me out at dusk, already snowing. No supplies, no pack escort, no mercy. "Let the cold deal with you," he said. But I didn't fall immediately. I ran. I hid. And I kept the pups warm even as frost coated my lashes and numbness crept into my fingers. Hours passed. Maybe more. My legs trembled violently. My lungs felt full of knives. The pups whimpered again, and fear dragged me forward another step, and another, until my knees buckled. We collapsed into the snow together. I curled over them, pulling them beneath my cloak, making my body a shield. My own warmth seeped into them. Their tiny hearts thudded frantically against my ribs. "Shh," I whispered, my lips barely forming the word, "I'm here. I'm here." I lowered my head until my hair formed a barrier against the wind. This was how I would die. Not a Luna. Not a traitor. Not a wife. Just a woman trying to protect two children who should never have been punished for my mate's cruelty. My vision dimmed. The cold sank deeper, burrowing into my bones. My fingers stopped responding. But even as my strength slipped away, even as the blizzard swallowed the world around us, I whispered one last promise. "I won't let you freeze. Not you." Then darkness rose, soft and suffocating. My final thought was a quiet relief, that the pups, at least, would die warm. But the world didn't end in silence. It ended with the crunch of heavy boots on snow. A shadow loomed through the storm, a massive figure striding toward us with purpose, with fury in every step. And before unconsciousness swallowed me whole, I heard a voice I'd only heard whispered in fear during Bloodthorn Council meetings, a voice belonging to the Alpha King of our greatest enemy, Stormfell's ruler, Arin. "Oh, Moon," he breathed, kneeling as the pups whimpered beneath me. "What happened to you?" Then everything went black. The world was white when I drifted back from the edge of unconsciousness. Not soft white, not the gentle snowfall I used to watch from my window as Luna, but a violent, tearing white that scraped at my skin and howled through the mountains like a beast grieving its dead. The blizzard had swallowed everything, sound, breath, hope, except for the scent that cut through it. Pine, smoke, male, powerful, unfamiliar, not Bloodthorn. I forced my eyes open through frozen lashes. Snow clung to my hair. My arms were still wrapped protectively around the two pups tucked beneath my cloak, their tiny bodies pressed desperately against my ribs for heat. I didn't feel my fingers anymore, only the need to keep them warm. My vision blurred again, exhaustion pulling me under, when a dark shape moved through the storm. Slow at first, then faster. A predator's stride, purposeful and unhesitating. A wolf's aura hit me before the figure did. An overwhelming surge of dominance, ancient and cold like winter itself. My fading breath caught. Storm fell. No, 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 no. Anyone but him. The figure stopped just a few paces away, towering above me. Snow whipped between us like shards of glass, but I could still make out broad shoulders, a thick cloak weighed down by ice, and eyes that glowed faintly in the swirling dark. Silver. Unmistakable. Arin, the Alpha King of Stormfell. Bloodthorn's sworn enemy. Of all the places, of all the wolves, destiny had thrown him into my death scene. I tried to push myself upright, to shield the pups more fully, but my limbs refused to obey. My body trembled violently, not from fear. Fear was familiar. But from cold, so deep it hollowed out my bones. Arin didn't move. He simply watched me, one hand gripping the hilt of the blade strapped to his thigh, snow melting on the dark leather of his gloves. His gaze swept over the pups hidden under my torn cloak, then lingered on me. I couldn't read him. Stormfell wolves were known for many things: brutality, honor twisted by battle, eyes like winter storms. But mercy? Never. My throat tightened. Air scraped through my chest like sand. If he thought this was a trap, that I, the discarded Luna of Bloodthorn, had been sent into a blizzard to lure him, then the pups and I were already dead. He crouched slowly, bringing himself closer to my level. His presence was overwhelming up close, heat radiating through the cold, dominance curling around me like an unseen hand. Celine. His voice was low, edged with warning and disbelief. What in the moon's name are you doing here? My lips were so numb I wasn't sure they would move, but the pups whimpered faintly, the smallest cry muffled against my ribs. That sound broke me open. I gathered what little breath I had left, forcing out a whisper that barely carried over the storm. Please, save them. Arin went still, completely, terrifyingly still. The wind screamed around us, the snow clawed at his cloak, but the Alpha King didn't blink, didn't breathe, didn't move a single muscle, because enemies did not beg for their enemies' children. Bloodthorn and Stormfell had spilled each other's blood for generations. Our packs were born in hatred. Our wolves taught to snarl the moment the other's scent hit the air. Yet here I was, the disgraced Luna of Bloodthorn, begging the Stormfell Alpha to save wolf pups that carried the scent of my mate. It defied logic, honor, war. It defied everything. Arn's jaw flexed once beneath the scruff darkening his face, his gaze cut from my frostbitten hands to the fragile shadows beneath my cloak. They're not yours, he said quietly, though I heard the question buried inside. They're innocent. My voice broke, barely audible. Please. For a heartbeat, I thought he would turn away. Stormfell kings made decisions like they swung blades, clean, swift, merciless. He had no reason to help. Every reason not to. Saving Bloodthorn heirs could ignite political chaos. Or worse, cost him his own council's loyalty. But something flickered in his eyes. Something I had not expected in a man carved from winter. Reluctant. Mercy. Or maybe just reluctant curiosity. Move, he ordered softly. I couldn't. My body had gone beyond shaking. Now it simply lay heavy and useless in the snow. Arin exhaled sharply, as if irritated by my weakness, or by his own decision. Then he reached for me. Not roughly. Not as an enemy, but with a firm, controlled strength that told me he had already chosen. He eased the pups from beneath my cloak, wrapping them against his chest beneath his furs. They whimpered, but he held them with surprising gentleness for a wolf feared in every territory. Only then did he lift me, his arms sliding beneath my frozen body as if it weighed nothing. Heat. Blinding. Overwhelming. My head fell against his shoulder. "You're freezing," he muttered. "You should be dead." I almost was. His arms tightened imperceptibly. Not anymore. My eyes closed, because the strangest truth washed over me. Not comfort, not trust. Something in between. I was alive because my enemy refused to let me die. And I didn't yet understand the dangerous fate that decision had just set in motion. Not for me, not for the pups, not for the Alpha King carrying all three of us through the storm, but I would. Very soon. When consciousness flickered again, it came in pieces. The scrape of wind across stone, the muffled beat of a heart that wasn't mine, the distant echo of a storm still raging beyond the mountains. But before those sounds reached me, I remembered the pups. My eyes shot open. Snowflakes clung to Arin's cloak, but the pups were cradled against his chest, wrapped in the heavy fur he had stripped from his own shoulders. Their tiny breaths fogged against the dark fabric. One let out a soft whine, nuzzling closer to him. Arin heard it. His jaw twitched once. Only once. But enough to tell me everything. He knew. He knew whose pups they were. Even half-frozen and weak, I could read the change in him like a page torn from a book. The way his shoulders stiffened. The way his eyes went not just cold, but lethal. Those pups didn't just belong to Bloodthorn. They were the heirs of the wolf who murdered half of Aaron's family, his younger brother, his uncle, his mother's mate. Stormfell and Bloodthorn weren't rivals. They were war carved into history. Arin's gaze dropped to the pups again, slow, assessing, heavy with a rage so old it had fossilized inside him. His voice emerged low and sharp, cutting through the howl of the storm. "These pups should not exist." I flinched. I couldn't help it. The truth in his words felt like a blade pressed to the back of my neck. "They are innocent," I said, though my voice shook. "They didn't choose their blood." He didn't look at me. "They carry the scent of the Alpha who slaughtered my kin." I know. My throat tightened as I forced the words through frozen lips. "But they carry my protection too." That made him pause. Not soften, not relent. Pause. He studied me like he was trying to understand why a Luna cast out to die would cling to pups that bore another wolf's claim, as if the answer made no sense to him. And it didn't. Not unless he knew the truth. My mate cast me out because he feared these pups were not his, and because killing me would have been too merciful. Arin finally tore his gaze away, looking out over the darkening horizon. The blizzard had swallowed the world whole. Wind roared over the ridges, tearing up drifts of fresh snow. "We won't survive here long," he said. He could have ended it like that. He could have let the snow bury us, let the storm finish what Bloodthorn started. No one would question an Alpha King letting the enemy's Luna and the enemy's heirs die in a blizzard. It was cleaner, simpler, expected. My voice cracked as I whispered, "Please, don't leave them. Not me, not us, them." Something flickered across his face, a muscle shifting, a breath tightening. His instinct warred against every law of pack, blood, and vengeance. "This is madness," he muttered. But he reached for me anyway. His arm slid under my knees and back, lifting me from the ground with a controlled strength that should have scared me but didn't. The pups were nestled against my body now, wrapped inside the protective fold of his cloak. His warmth hit me like fire after drowning in ice. I sagged against him, unable to hold up my own weight. My cheek brushed the rough wool of his collar. Arin inhaled sharply, as if surprised I had a scent at all beneath all that cold. "You're still freezing," he said. "Stay awake." "I'm trying." The blizzard slammed into us again, wind whipping around his broad frame. Aaron adjusted his hold, tightening his grip on the pups, tightening his grip on me, as if instinct had made the decision he couldn't admit aloud. Duty said he should let us die. Instinct said something else. Something dangerous. He began to walk. Each step was brutal. Ice cracking beneath his boots, snow piling against his cloak. The storm clawed at him, trying to pull us back, trying to drag us under. Still he kept moving. Through cold that numbed bone. Through darkness that swallowed sound. At one point, a gust nearly knocked him sideways. He braced his body around us, snarling at the wind, as if it were something he could fight head-on. The pups whimpered again. His steps jolted. It was subtle. So subtle another wolf might have missed it, but I felt it. The small, involuntary shift he made to shield them more fully. As if he had forgotten who they belonged to. As if instinct had claimed them in a way logic refused to. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered. My lips barely obeying me. His jaw clenched. "I don't know." Duty said, "Leave them." Rage said, "Kill them." History said, "Bury them." But instinct? Instinct told him to carry all three of us out of that storm. When my head dropped against his shoulder, slipping toward unconsciousness, he growled quietly. Not at me, but at the storm itself, as if daring the blizzard to take what he had decided, somehow, to protect. "Stay alive," he ordered, voice rough. "I'm not losing anyone else to Bloodthorn." Anyone else? He didn't mean me. He didn't mean the pups. He meant his family. But still, his arms tightened around us. And that was the moment I knew. Whatever fate awaited us in Stormfell, nothing would ever be simple again. Warmth woke me before consciousness did. Not sunlight, not a fire, a presence. For a moment I didn't understand why my body wasn't shaking, why the cold that had been gnawing through my bones was gone. I lay still, suspended between a nightmare and something I didn't yet trust. Then a voice sliced through the haze. "Open your eyes." Not a command shouted, a quiet order, controlled, dangerous. My heart lurched. Aaron, the Stormfell Alpha. I gasped and bolted upright, too fast. The world tilted, my vision blurred before snapping into place, revealing a stone chamber lit by amber lanterns and warmed by a roaring hearth. Thick fur blankets covered me. My skin stung as heat returned to my limbs. It didn't feel real. This was a king's chamber. This was an enemy's stronghold. And I was alive inside it. I pressed my back against the headboard, gripping the blankets like a shield. "Where?" "You're in Stormfell," Aaron said calmly from the shadows. He wasn't sitting. He wasn't relaxed. He was standing, arms folded, his broad frame blocking the doorway as though he were a barrier between me and the rest of the world. The storm had left his hair damp and wild. Snow still clung to his boots. His silver eyes burned with something fierce and unreadable. I swallowed hard. "Where are the pups?" My voice cracked with panic. A flicker crossed his face. Quick, subtle, gone before I could define it. "Safe," he said, "sleeping in the adjoining chamber. They ate. They're warm." The breath left my body in a shaky exhale. Relief hit so hard it almost made me dizzy. Aaron saw it. Of course he did. His gaze sharpened, predatory and curious at once. "You care for them more than your own life." "They're helpless," I murmured. "They're Bloodthorn's heirs." I flinched. He stepped forward. Slow, deliberate, every inch of him radiating the authority of a king who never asked questions without expecting an answer. "Tell me something, Celine," he said, voice low and cutting. "Why would the former Luna of Bloodthorn throw her body over pups that aren't hers?" I looked away. My silence angered him, but not in the explosive way I expected from a wolf forged by war. His rage simmered instead, cold and sharpened like a blade kept hidden until necessary. He moved closer, not touching, but close enough that I felt the heat coming off his skin. Why protect the children of a wolf who cast you out to die? His voice dropped to a growl, restrained but deadly. Why save the heirs of a pack that would rejoice at Stormfell's ruin? I gripped the blanket tighter, because I couldn't tell him. Not the full truth. Not the shame. Not the real reason my mate had thrown me into a blizzard like discarded prey. Arn studied me in silence, and the crackle of the fire filled the gap between us. His gaze roamed my face, not lustful, not mocking, but searching. Trying to understand a puzzle that defied his every instinct. He exhaled through his nose, sharp and frustrated. You risked your life for them. I said nothing. You nearly froze to death, he pressed. You should have died. Yes. My voice was barely a whisper. Why? Silence. Arn stepped back finally, pacing once as if he needed space from the question itself. His hands curled briefly into fists. You confuse me, he muttered. A laugh almost escaped me, broken, bitter, exhausted. If he was confused, what was I? A Luna who had been replaced, betrayed, cast out, yet still clinging to two pups who bore the scent of the wolf who had tried to erase me. Arn stopped pacing and turned back toward me. This time, he didn't look angry. He looked something far more unsettling. Fascinated, like he couldn't decide whether I was a miracle or a threat. He took another slow step toward the bed. You are in my keep now, under Stormfell protection. His voice roughened. That means no one harms you. No one touches you. You understand? I stared at him, stunned. I didn't understand at all. Arn read the confusion on my face, and his jaw tightened. Not with irritation, but with something like unease, as if he didn't understand either. This should not be happening, he murmured to himself. I should not have brought you here. My heart pounded. Then, why did you? His eyes met mine, silver and burning with a storm of contradiction. I don't know. The honesty in that answer rattled something deep inside me. He didn't know why he'd saved me, didn't know why he'd defied instinct and history, didn't know why he'd carried his mortal enemy through the snow as if she were something precious and breakable. Wariness should have swallowed me whole. Fear should have made me shrink back into the blankets. But instead, a spark flickered in the center of my chest. Not trust, not safety. Something smaller, quieter. Hope's cousin, the shadow of belief. Because Arn was a man who never acted without reason. And yet he had saved me anyway. His next words were rough, almost reluctant. Rest. You're safe. For now. For now. I repeated softly. His gaze lingered on me one heartbeat too long, then another. Then he turned and walked out, leaving the scent of winter and a question burning in the air between us. Why, of all wolves, did the Alpha King save me? I didn't expect to wake again. I certainly didn't expect warmth, or softness, or the faint scent of pine resin woven into fur blankets. But when my eyes opened the next morning, pale winter light spilled through a narrow window cut into Stormfell stone, and for a moment, just a moment, I forgot I was a prisoner in the enemy keep. Then pain reminded me. Not the cold, worse. The ache of bruises forming under my skin. The sting of half-healed bite marks along my ribs. The burn of old scars that never should have been gifted to a Luna. I tried to sit up, but the motion sent a sharp ripple of pain across my torso. A small gasp escaped me. That was when the healer entered. She was older, her gray-streaked hair braided tight, her eyes sharp and too perceptive. She moved closer, hands gentle but firm as she scanned my face, my pulse, the frost burn along my neck. Then she froze. Her fingers brushed the edge of the deep purple bruise spreading across my hip. "Who did this to you?" she whispered. I tensed. "It doesn't matter." Her gaze sharpened. "It matters to the king." Of course it did. Aaron's shadow filled the doorway before I had even formed a response. He didn't enter at first. He stood there, silent and still, as if he were made of carved winter stone instead of flesh and fury. His eyes flicked from the healer, to me, to the bruises now exposed beneath the pushed-aside blanket. And something in him changed. Not explosively, not loudly, but deeply. His shoulders squared, his jaw clenched, his breath grew heavier, controlled, but only just. His wolf rose behind his gaze like a storm cloud darkening an entire sky. "Tell me," he said, not to the healer, to me. I wrapped the blanket around myself, heat rising in my cheeks, not from shame, but from the humiliation of being inspected like damage. "It's nothing," I murmured. He took 3 steps into the room. 3 slow, devastating steps. "Nothing?" His voice was soft. Too soft. A softness that vibrated with dangerous restraint. "Those are bite marks, Celine." I swallowed hard. He continued, each word colder than the snow outside. "No alpha mark sits beside them. No claim. No protection. Only punishment." The healer cleared her throat. "Your Majesty," but Aaron didn't move his gaze, not even for a breath. "Why?" he said quietly. "Does a Luna of Bloodthorn bear marks like these?" I closed my eyes. The truth pressed against my throat like something sharp. "My mate," I whispered. He believed they weren't his. Aaron went motionless. Utterly, terrifyingly motionless. The healer let out a breath that trembled with pity. I wished she hadn't. Pity felt like another bruise. "He cast you out?" she asked softly. I nodded once. "And left the pups to die?" Another nod. Aaron's voice came low, rough, almost dangerous. "He banished his own children?" I swallowed the truth. "They are not mine," I said. "But that doesn't matter." For the first time since waking, I looked directly at him. "They're innocent." The door creaked, and 2 small shapes barreled inside, tiny paws padding over stone, small whimpers cutting through the tension. The pups. Their little noses twitched as they sniffed the air, then they scrambled toward me with surprising speed, pressing themselves against my legs, burrowing into my blankets. Aaron watched, not with disdain, not with confusion this time, but with something far heavier. Recognition. Because wolves didn't cling to someone unless they sensed safety, or truth, or destiny. The smaller of the pups licked my wrist. The other curled at my feet. Their warmth seeped into my skin, thawing a place inside me I didn't realize had frozen long before the blizzard ever touched me. The healer murmured something about herbs and salves and quietly left, but Aaron didn't. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him, see the faint tremor in his clenched fists, hear the restrained fury in his breath. "Why save them?" His voice was barely human. "Why save the children of the wolf who threw you to the snow like garbage?" My throat tightened. The truth rose without my permission. Because someone had to. He stared at me as if the world had tilted. I swallowed hard, continuing softly. "They did nothing wrong. They didn't ask to be born into hate. They don't deserve to die for it." Silence fell, deep and thick, like snowfall. Aaron's eyes softened. Just a fracture, a crack in the armor of a king. "You would die for them," he murmured. "I would," I whispered. And I almost did. The pups pressed closer to me, whining softly. Aaron's gaze dropped to them, 2 tiny lives wrapped in the blankets of the woman who had been meant to die beside them. His wolf surged behind his eyes, not with aggression, but with something I had not expected to ever see from the Alpha King of Stormfell: admiration. He didn't say it, didn't have to. It settled in the room like a truth older than war. He had saved me out of instinct, but he was beginning to protect me out of something else entirely. Something dangerous, something fragile, something that felt, for the first time in years, like hope. By the time they let me walk, the walls had begun to whisper. Servants never spoke directly to me, not yet, but they spoke near me, near enough that I caught words in the spaces between their silence. Enemy, Bloodthorn, Luna. They tried to soften their voices when I passed, but wolves didn't realize how sharp their hearing was until they were listening for a threat. I clutched the shawl the healer had wrapped around my shoulders and pretended I couldn't hear. Don't look at her scars. She saved the pups, they say. Or use them as leverage. I kept my eyes down and walked. It was better that way. I'd spent years being ghosted in my own pack, seen only when it served someone else. Being unseen was a skill I hadn't forgotten, which is how I ended up behind the pillar when the court exploded. The throne hall of Stormfell was carved directly out of the mountain: dark stone, high ceilings, banners in deep gray and midnight blue. I had only meant to pass along the corridor that ran beside it, following the healer's instructions to move a little each day. But the moment I reached the archway, voices crashed into me like a wave. She's the enemy Luna. She could be a spy, Your Majesty. We should kill her before Bloodthorn comes to reclaim her and demand compensation. My heart stopped. I pressed my back flat against the cold stone of the pillar, just inside the archway but hidden from direct view. The fabric of my borrowed dress whispered against the rock. My fingers dug into the shawl hard enough to hurt. I shouldn't listen. I couldn't. Not. Beyond the pillar, I could see part of the room, enough to glimpse nobles in fine leathers and furs, gathered in a loose semicircle below the dais. Enough to see Arn sitting on the high stone throne, one elbow resting on the arm, his thumb pressed against his lower lip in a gesture that somehow managed to be thoughtful and dangerous at once. His eyes were silver in the torchlight, hard, sharp. A male noble with iron-streaked hair stepped forward, chest puffed, with the confidence of someone who thought their fear was wisdom. Your Majesty, with respect, he said, though his tone held very little of it. The presence of Bloodthorn's rejected Luna in our keep is a risk we cannot afford. She might be here to destabilize us from within. She was found half dead in a blizzard, another scoffed. Some plan. She might be bait, a third insisted. They sent her as a poor, wounded thing. We show mercy. Then they strike while our guard is down. A murmured chorus of agreement rippled through the hall. My lungs tightened. I could feel my pulse pounding at the base of my throat, frantic and loud. It felt like the whole hall could hear it, like it echoed off the stone. Kill her before her pack comes. The words lodged like ice in my spine. I flattened further against the pillar, as if I could merge with the stone itself. A part of me whispered that I should run, that I should find the pups, grab them, and disappear into any dark corner the keep would offer. But another part of me knew better. There was nowhere to go. I belonged nowhere. Not Bloodthorn. Not here. Not anywhere. Enough. Arn's voice cut through the noise like a blade. The hall fell instantly silent. I couldn't see his face from my angle, only the way his posture shifted, straightening with a controlled violence that made every noble in front of him still. One of them cleared his throat, braver, or more foolish, than the rest. Your Majesty, he began again, surely you must see the danger. She carries Bloodthorn scent. She carries their secrets. The snarl that tore from Arn's throat was low, but it made my knees weaken even from my hidden place. It wasn't wild. It wasn't out of control. It was possession sharpened into sound. She lives by my decree, he said, each word carefully enunciated, wrapped around steel. Or do you suggest my judgment is flawed? The noble paled. I meant no insult to your majesty, only that you speak of danger. Arin cut in. Let us speak of fact instead. He rose from the throne. The motion was unhurried, but there was nothing relaxed about it. Power rolled off him, tangible and heavy, filling the room, making even the torch flames seem to shrink back. Fact, he said, descending the steps slowly, is that we found her in a blizzard that should have killed any wolf or human within the hour. Fact is that she was already half frozen. He stopped at the bottom of the dais, gaze scanning his gathered court. Fact is, he continued, voice dropping, that she had no weapons, no escort, no protection, nothing but two pups tucked beneath her body as she died over them. I gripped the shawl tighter, my throat burned. I stared at the stone at my feet, unable to look away from the scene unfolding inches beyond the pillar. One noble scoffed weakly. A convenient story. You doubt my word? Arin's tone went arctic. The scoffer immediately bowed his head. Never, your majesty. Good, Arin said. Because here is another fact. Those pups are Bloodthorn's heirs. The hall erupted again. Gasps, curses, whispers of impossible and heirs. And this is madness. Arin let them spin for 3 seconds, exactly 3. Then his voice crashed over them once more. She protected the future of the very pack that cast her out, he said. She chose to shield children who are nothing but a living reminder of her own suffering. His gaze turned flinty, dangerous. That is not the behavior of a spy, he finished quietly. That is the behavior of someone who understands innocence better than the rest of you. Silence followed. Not the respectful silence of agreement, the sharp silence of uncertainty. Someone tried again, more carefully this time. Even so, your majesty, Bloodthorn may demand her return. If they learn she lives, they will not have her. Arin's answer was instant, final. She left their territory under a death sentence. Under Stormfell law, that makes her ours. A tremor ran down my spine. Ours. Like I was a resource, a burden, a responsibility, but not prey. Kill her before her pack comes, another noble muttered, underestimating my hearing and their king's temper. Arin's head snapped toward the sound. The growl that rumbled from his chest this time was quieter, but my body reacted as if he'd shouted, a primitive, instinctive shiver of awareness. My wolf, beaten and caged for so long, stirred somewhere deep inside my ribs. Say it again, Arin murmured. The noble swallowed. I only meant, say it, Arin repeated, taking a single step toward him. Say again that the woman who shielded pups not her own with her life should be killed, so you may sleep with fewer imagined monsters under your bed. The man's lips pressed into a hard line. He said nothing. Arin held his gaze for a long, punishing heartbeat. Then he turned to address them all. Selene of Bloodthorn, he said, voice ringing with finality, lives under my protection. She breathes because I allow it, and she will continue to do so until I decree otherwise. If any of you lay a hand on her without my permission... The air thickened. Wolves shifted uncomfortably. I will consider it an act of treason against Stormfell. The word hung in the hall like a death sentence. No one argued after that. They bowed stiffly, one by one, some in sincerity, others in simmering resentment. Plans would form from that resentment. That much I knew. Wolves who couldn't attack the king would look for softer targets. Like me. My heart hammered painfully in my chest. Fear coiled in my stomach. But beneath it, something else. Arin had not only refused to let them kill me, he'd tied my survival to his own authority. To question my right to breathe was now to question his right to rule. Fear still burned. through me as the court dispersed. But it was no longer pure, icy terror. It carried, hidden somewhere at its center, a fragile, unexpected thread of something warmer. The realization that in a keep full of enemies, one wolf had just drawn a line of protection around me and dared anyone to cross it. Night in Stormfell was not quiet. The mountains breathed. The wind moaned through the stone. Wolves patrolled the outer courtyards, their claws clicking softly over frost. But inside my small chamber, it was the smallest sound that undid me. A whimper, thin at first, barely a tremor in the dark, then sharper, pitched with distress. One of the pups. My heart slammed painfully against my ribs. No, not now. Not here. I threw off the blankets and stumbled toward their little nest near the hearth. My hands shook so badly I could barely lift the tiny bundle of fur. He was cold, crying, squirming. His sibling twitched in her sleep beside him, sensing his fear. I pressed him against my chest, whispering frantically, it's okay, please don't cry, please." But the sound only grew louder, echoing, accusing. And suddenly, I wasn't in Stormfell anymore. I was back in Bloodthorn's stone hall. Back in the room where a single cry would ignite a rage I never saw coming. Back where the wrong sound at the wrong moment meant teeth at my throat and a brutal voice snarling, "Silence her or I will." My breath stuttered. I rocked the pup too quickly, too desperately, trying to muffle his cries against my shoulder. "No, please stop crying, please, please, just stop. He'll hear, he'll—" "Celine." The voice behind me was low, firm, and terrifying in the dark. "Aaron." I froze. The pup cried harder. My pulse skyrocketed, panic flooding me so violently my vision blurred around the edges. I curled instinctively over the small body in my arms, shielding him, waiting for the blow. The snarl. The hand yanking me backward. The— "Celine." The second time, Aaron's voice softened. Not with pity, but with something steadier. "Look at me." I couldn't. I couldn't turn. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't risk seeing the expression I had learned to fear. But I felt him approach. He didn't storm across the room. He didn't radiate dominance the way he had in the throne hall. He moved like a wolf approaching a wounded creature, slow, deliberate, hands visible at his sides. "Give him to me," he murmured. "No," I gasped, tightening my grip. "Please, he's just scared. I'll quiet him, I promise. I'll—" My voice broke entirely. Aaron inhaled slowly. "Celine," he said, gentler now. "I'm not going to hurt him." I still didn't move. Couldn't. My ribs shook with each terrified breath. My wolf, damaged, silent for so long, pressed hard against the cage in my mind. Not to fight, but to hide. Aaron came close enough that I could feel the heat of him at my back. Close enough for his scent. Fur, cold earth, storm air, to override the memory of Bloodthorn's alpha. "Sit," he said quietly, "before you fall." My legs, shaking too hard to obey me, folded anyway. I sank to the floor, the pup clutched to my chest. Aaron lowered himself beside me, slowly, carefully, leaving space. He didn't reach for the pup. He didn't touch me. He just sat. The crying still cut through the dark like a blade. Each whimper stabbed into old scars, dragging up memories I had buried under frost and survival. Aaron watched me for a long, steady moment. Then he spoke. "What did he do to you?" I stiffened. He didn't push, didn't snap, didn't demand. He simply waited, his silver eyes soft in the dim glow of the fire. After a long stretch of silence, I swallowed painfully. "He hated noise," I whispered. "Any noise." Aaron's gaze darkened. "The pups?" he asked. "The pups. Me. The wind." I shook my head, trembling. If something disturbed him, he lashed out. Aaron's hands curled on his knees. Not at me, not even at the crying pup, but at the memory of another male's violence. Is that why you hid your voice when I found you? He asked quietly. I have no voice to hide, I murmured. He took that too. Aaron went very still. The pup continued whimpering, nestling closer into my chest. I rocked him gently, but this time my hands weren't frantic, just shaking. Aaron lowered one hand slowly toward the pup, not touching, just letting his warmth radiate near us. The pup quieted a little, nose twitching at his scent. You're safe here, he said. I wanted to believe him. You don't have to flinch when he cries, he added softly. My voice cracked. I can't help it. I know. The fire popped. The mountain wind moaned. The pup let out one small, tired huff and stilled in my arms. I let out a breath I'd been holding for years. Aaron watched me through all of it, his face carved with something fierce and unbearably gentle beneath the hard exterior. This is why you protected them, he said quietly, even knowing they weren't yours. They're innocent, I whispered. They didn't choose any of this? His jaw clenched. And you did? My breath caught. The question wasn't cruel. It was devastatingly sincere. No, I whispered. I didn't choose any of it. He nodded once, slow, almost reverent. Then, to my shock, he reached forward and brushed one fingertip along the top of the pup's head. The smallest touch. The pup relaxed fully, breathing evenly now. Aaron's voice dropped, rough with something I couldn't name. No one will punish you for protecting children. Not in Stormfell. Not while I live. My chest tightened painfully. Not fear. Something warmer. Something frightening. Something that tasted like safety and felt like danger. I looked up. Our eyes met. Something shifted between us. Not loud or dramatic, but quiet and certain, like a knot, pulling tight. A bond neither of us had meant to begin, but it was there. In the darkness. Between 3 fragile breaths and a single crying pup. And in the way Aaron said, barely above a whisper, you break, and I will still choose to stand beside you. The night the assassins came, the air felt wrong. It wasn't a sound or a shadow, or even a scent that alerted me at first. It was instinct. That faint prickle along the spine wolves are born knowing, the one I'd learned to trust long before I ever learned to speak. The pups were asleep on the rug by the hearth, bundled in furs, tiny bodies rising and falling in even breaths. I sat nearby, mending a torn sleeve with one of the healer's spare needles, trying to pretend my hands weren't shaking from everything Aaron had made me relive the night before. The chamber was quiet, safe, warm, until it wasn't. A floorboard creaked, but not inside my room, inside the walls. My breath hitched. Stormfell was built like a fortress, layered hallways, hidden gaps in the stone, narrow passages only warriors used during wartime. I'd heard servants talk about the bones of the mountain like they were alive. Tonight, they shifted. A second creak. Closer. Deliberate. Then a faint thump above us. The sound of weight landing lightly on rafters. My pulse stuttered in my throat. No. No, not now. Not with the pups. I grabbed both of them at once, pulling them into my arms. Their tiny ears flicked. One whined softly, sensing my panic. Before I could reach the door, the lantern flickered, then died. Not naturally. Snuffed out. Darkness swallowed the chamber whole. My breath froze in my chest. A soft scrape whispered behind me. Metal brushing stone. Footsteps. Too light to be a guard, too slow to be a servant. Then a voice, barely audible. There she is. Cold flooded my limbs. I backed instinctively toward the corner, clutching the pups against me, trying to make myself small, invisible, anything that wouldn't draw the blade I knew was coming. The door shifted. not opening, but blocking the faintest sliver of light beneath it. Someone was standing outside. No escape. The assassins had boxed me in. "Orders were clear," another voice hissed. "Kill her! Kill the pups!" The pups whimpered. My heart broke at the sound. I couldn't fight. I couldn't run. All I could do was protect them, just as I had in the blizzard. Even if it meant dying here, in the dark, alone. A blade clicked free of a sheath. I pressed my back to the wall, whispering a silent prayer I barely believed in. Then, a snarl ripped through the darkness. Powerful, ferocious, unmistakable Aaron. The door didn't open. It exploded inward, ripped from its hinges like paper. Torchlight flooded in behind him as he stepped through the shattered frame, shadows clinging to his body like armor. His eyes burned with silver fire, brighter than the flames behind him. He had shifted partially, claws extended, canines visible, his wolf surging just beneath his skin. And he was furious. The assassins turned on him, blades raised. They didn't get a second strike. Aaron moved like a storm breaking loose, brutal, fast, unstoppable. The first assassin's throat opened under his claws before the man could even scream. The second managed half a turn before Aaron grabbed him by the neck and slammed him into the stone so hard the wall cracked. Blood sprayed, bodies fell. It was violent, terrifying, merciless. But not once did fear touch me. Not even when the killers died inches from where I stood. Not even when Aaron looked up at me with his wolf fully awake. He wasn't a threat. He wasn't danger. He was salvation wrapped in fury. His chest heaved, breath ragged as he scanned the room for more danger. When he saw the pups trembling in my arms, something primal flashed across his face. Not rage. Possession. He stalked toward me, stopping only when he was close enough for the heat of his body to counter the cold still clinging to my skin. "Someone wants you dead," he growled, voice barely human. I swallowed hard. I heard them in the walls. His eyes darkened. "They won't get near you again." He said it like a vow sworn in blood. The pups whimpered, and without thinking, I reached for him. Not to seek protection, but because I knew, with a clarity that shocked me, that he needed to see they were alive. His gaze dropped to the pups. His breathing slowed. One tiny wolf reached out with a paw and pressed it against the fabric of his tunic. The change in him was immediate. The tension in his shoulders loosened. Something soft, impossibly soft, touched his expression. He lifted his hand and gently brushed one pup's head. My body sagged with relief. Not fear, not trembling. Relief. Aaron saw it. His brows pulled together, concern breaking through the remnants of his fury. "You're shaking," he murmured. My voice cracked. "I thought I wouldn't be able to protect them." His jaw flexed. Then he cupped the side of my face, thumb grazing my cheek with surprising gentleness for a man whose hands were still stained with blood. "You're still breathing," he said, "because I got here in time, and I will always get here in time." I closed my eyes, not trusting my voice. For the first time in my life, danger hadn't ended in pain or punishment. It had ended in rescue, in protection, in the certainty that someone powerful and unyielding would stand between me and the dark. When I opened my eyes again, Aaron was still watching me, fury fading, something deeper taking its place. Trust, or the beginning of it. And for the first time since the blizzard, I let myself breathe. Aaron didn't speak after the assassins' bodies were dragged away. He simply looked at me, not the way a king studies a threat, but the way a storm looks at a single fragile flame, as if any wrong breath might blow me out. Then, without asking permission, he reached for me. "Come." Just one word, low and rough, but gentler than anything he'd used in the throne hall. His hand didn't grip my wrist. It hovered there, close enough for me to choose. I surprised myself by taking it. He led me through the keep in silence, down a stone corridor lit by torches, up a narrow staircase carved directly into the mountain. The cold air grew sharper the higher we climbed. We stepped out onto a private terrace overlooking the entire valley. An endless sweep of frost and moonlight, Stormfell's snowy peaks rising like giants in the distance. The wind brushed my hair. Arin's presence anchored me. He didn't let go of my hand until he was certain the door behind us was shut and locked. Only then did he turn to face me fully. "Tell me who hurt you." It wasn't a question. It was a command he barely contained beneath the tremor in his voice. I froze, every instinct screaming to stay silent, to protect myself, to protect the pups, to protect the last pieces of dignity I still owned. But Aaron stepped closer, not closing in, not trapping, just standing with me. His voice lowered, rough as gravel under a storm. "Celine," he murmured, "I need to understand. I need to know why someone broke you enough that you flinch at shadows." My throat tightened. "I'm not broken." "No," he agreed quietly. "You survived things that should have killed you. But surviving leaves marks." His gaze flicked to the fading bruises the healer had bandaged earlier, to the scar that wrapped around my shoulder like a warning, to the stiffness in my posture whenever something moved behind me. Then his eyes met mine again, softer than I'd ever seen. "Tell me," he repeated, "who hurt you?" The words clawed up from a place I'd buried so deep I sometimes pretended it didn't exist. "My mate," I whispered. Arin's entire body went still. "He blamed me for the pup's birth," I continued, voice trembling. "He said they weren't his, that I'd shamed him, that I'd corrupted our bloodline." The memory sliced through me, cold as the blizzard he'd thrown me into. Arin's hands curled into fists. "He accused you? Without proof?" "He didn't want proof." I swallowed hard. "He wanted an excuse." "To do what?" Arin asked, voice deadly calm. I stared at the snow-covered valley. "To reject me," I said. "To drag me to the border, into the storm. To leave me there where no one would find me." A sound tore from Arin's throat. Not quite a growl, not quite a human sound. Something in between. Something wounded and enraged. My breath shook. "He said wolves don't keep broken mates." Arin's eyes burned bright gold. "He left you," he said, each word carved in ice. "In the snow, alone, knowing you would die." "Yes." "And he left the pups," Arin growled. "His own blood. To die. With you." My voice cracked. "He wanted them to freeze." Rage rolled off Arin in waves, so thick and alive the air vibrated with it. But it wasn't directed at me. It was for me. He took a step toward me, stopping only when we were close enough that each of his breaths brushed my cheek. His voice was rough when he spoke again, like something inside him was breaking. "He tried to kill you," Arin whispered. "And them." A single tear slid down my cheek before I could stop it. He reached out slowly, giving me a chance to refuse, and brushed the tear away with the back of his knuckles. His hand shook. Not mine. His. "No one," he said, voice trembling with fury, "will ever harm you again." I inhaled sharply. "Arin." He cupped my jaw gently, thumb tracing the faintest line along my skin. "You were thrown away like you were nothing," he murmured. "But you shielded 2 helpless pups with your body. You walked through hell and still protected life. Do you understand what strength that takes?" My breath hitched. "You are not broken," he whispered. "You were betrayed." The truth of it splintered something inside me. The thing that had kept me silent, kept me small, kept me believing I had deserved everything done to me. My shoulders sagged with the weight of finally knowing it wasn't my fault. Arin stepped closer, his forehead lowering until it nearly rested against mine. If he ever comes for you, he said, voice so soft it melted into the wind, he will not leave Stormfell alive. My tears returned, but this time they weren't from fear. They were from relief, healing, from the terrifying sensation of finally not being alone. I whispered the only thing I could manage. Thank you. Aaron exhaled shakily like he'd been holding his breath for hours. You don't thank me, he said softly. You stay alive. You stay with the pups. A pause. And you stay where I can protect you. For the first time since the blizzard, warmth bloomed in my chest, fragile, trembling, and real. By the third morning in Stormfell, I felt the shift before anyone spoke it aloud. Not in the halls, not in the way the guards stood straighter, not even in the way Aaron's generals suddenly filled the war room like restless wolves. The air itself had changed, tightened. Something hunted the borders. I sensed it in the marrow of my bones, the same way prey knows when a predator circles the dark. I lingered in the corridor outside the council chamber, one pup on my hip and the other asleep against my shoulder. I had only meant to bring them breakfast. Instead, I heard words that chilled my blood. Bloodthorn scouts at the outer ridge. 3, maybe 4. They're searching the snow line. Hunting. My knees nearly buckled. Hunting. For me. One pup whimpered softly at my heartbeat's sudden spike. I pressed him closer, burying my face in his fur as if I could hide inside the scent of innocence. Footsteps thundered inside the chamber, and before I could retreat, the heavy door swung open. Aaron stepped out first, his expression set in stone. His generals flanked him like shadows carved from iron. When Aaron saw me standing there, with the pups clinging to me like frightened seedlings, something in his face fractured. Not anger, something sharper, deadlier, protective. Inside, he murmured. It wasn't an order, it was an instinct. I followed without thinking, my breath unsteady. The council chamber felt colder than the terrace had. Maps littered the table, tracking lines of mountain passes, riverbeds, and borders stained crimson. Aaron dismissed his generals with a single nod. They obeyed, though some cast uneasy glances at me as they filed out. Once the door shut, Aaron turned toward me fully. Selene, he said, voice low and steady. I need to ask you something, and I need truth. I swallowed, shifting the pups in my arms. Ask. He stepped closer, not looming, just near, just enough that warmth radiated off him. Would Bloodthorn send scouts? He said quietly. To retrieve you alive? I shook my head instantly. No. Then what are they looking for? My breath trembled. A body. His jaw clenched so hard I heard it crack. They want to confirm my death, I whispered. If I survived, it exposes everything. The pups, Aaron finished, his voice darkening. I nodded. The unspoken truth hung between us like a blade. If Bloodthorn learned I was alive, if they discovered their dead Luna now lived under Stormfell protection, it would shatter their political lies. And if they learned the pups were alive, it could shatter their entire power structure. Aaron stepped past me, pacing once, hands pressed against the edge of the table. He was trying to think like a king while fighting the instinct of a wolf. I watched the war happen behind his eyes. Finally, he spoke. They don't want you back, he said. They want you silent. Yes. They'll want the pups dead as well. My throat closed. Yes. He turned toward me, and in that moment, in the way he straightened, in the way his wolf surged behind his gaze, I knew he had already made a choice, but he still said it out loud. For them to reach you, he murmured, voice falling into a lethal whisper. They will have to cut through me first. A shiver rippled down my spine. Not fear. Recognition. He wasn't doing this because he owed me, or because of pity, or because he'd rescued me once in the snow and felt honor-bound to finish the task. He was choosing me, choosing to protect me, choosing the pups, even knowing the cost. What you're saying, I breathed, means war. His eyes softened. I know. And you would risk that? My voice cracked. For me? He approached me again, slow, deliberate. He cupped the back of my head, thumb brushing lightly along my hairline, grounding me in a way I hadn't felt grounded in years. For you, he said. For them. A pause. For truth. I closed my eyes, chest tightening with something painful and immense. But Bloodthorn? I am not afraid of them, Aaron cut in. And I will not cower because a corrupt alpha wants his crimes buried in the snow. His other hand came to rest gently on the pup asleep against my shoulder. This is Stormfell, he whispered, and no one hunts you here. My throat burned. No one had ever chosen me. Not like this. Not with the weight of a kingdom behind their vow. Aaron, I breathed, shaking. His voice dropped lower, rougher. You survived what should have destroyed you, he murmured. I will fight whatever comes next. He leaned close, forehead brushing mine. And if that means war, he whispered, so be it. The pup stirred between us, sensing the tension, the bond forming like wildfire and frost. I looked at him then. Really looked. This wasn't pity. It wasn't obligation. It was loyalty. Chosen freely. And my battered heart, fragile as snowfall, warmed in a way I didn't dare believe in. Yet there it was. Soft. Dangerous. Undeniable. Aaron had chosen his side, and for the first time in my life, someone's side included me. If someone had told me a month ago that I would ever smile again, I would have thought them cruel. Smiles belonged to a version of me that died long before the blizzard. But Stormfell had a way of thawing places inside me I didn't know were still frozen. It began in small ways. The pups following me around the keep like tiny shadows. The healer grumbling that I ate like a bird before shoving extra bread into my hands. The guards nodding at me with genuine respect instead of suspicion. And Aaron. Always Aaron. Watching from the edges at first. Silent. Unreadable. As if letting me dictate the space between us. Until one morning I caught him looking at me differently. Not the way a king watches a political risk. Not the way a wolf watches a wounded thing. But the way a man watches something he is trying very, very hard not to reach for. It was during breakfast in the smaller hall. The pups had discovered the joy of scrambled eggs, and one had smeared half his portion across my sleeve. I tried to wipe it off, laughing under my breath at the mess. Aaron froze. He was across the table, mid-conversation with a general, but his eyes snapped to me. Silver bright, soft at the edges, surprised and hungry all at once. He had never seen me laugh. He had never seen the woman beneath the fear. From that moment on, the air between us changed. He lingered when I spoke. He stood closer when danger was mentioned. He let his hand brush mine when passing a cup or leading me through a hallway. Soft touches, barely there touches, but enough to make my breath catch every single time. That evening, the pups were asleep early, curled in their shared nest like tiny storms exhausted from living. I stepped onto the terrace to breathe the crisp mountain air, expecting to be alone. I wasn't. Aaron stood there, leaning against the stone archway, moonlight carving his profile into sharp, beautiful lines. When he turned toward me, something shifted in his expression. A softening, a pulling, a quiet recognition I felt deep in my chest. He approached slowly. Celine. Just my name, but it sounded different in his voice tonight. Warmer. Rougher. I tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear, suddenly aware of my heartbeat. You should be resting, he said gently. I couldn't sleep. His mouth twitched, the ghost of a smile. I know. He stopped a foot away, close enough to feel the heat of him, close enough that I had to tilt my head up to meet his gaze. We stood like that for a breath, then another. His eyes dropped to my lips. My pulse thundered. He inhaled once, sharply, as if steadying himself. Celine, may I touch you? My breath stilled. He always asked. Always. My former mate had never asked for anything. Aaron asked as if each moment with me was a choice I needed to approve. Yes, I whispered. The word left me with no hesitation at all. His hand lifted slowly, fingers brushing the side of my face with reverence I didn't know how to receive. Heat flared where he touched, spreading beneath my skin like sunrise. He stepped closer. His thumb traced a soft line along my cheekbone. You're warm, he murmured. I swallowed. Is that bad? No, he whispered. It's perfect. The tension snapped like a thread pulled too tight. Aaron lowered his forehead to mine, breath mingling with mine, and for a heartbeat, the world was nothing but the space between our mouths. He waited. I leaned forward first. Our lips met softly. No rush, no hunger, just a tender, trembling connection that lit every nerve in my body. He kissed me like he had memorized the shape of my fear, like he wanted to rewrite every bruise with gentleness. His hand cupped the back of my neck. Mine slid to his chest. Stormfell's king kissed me as though I was something precious, something wanted, something his wolf had recognized long before he had. Heat pooled low in my stomach as the kiss deepened, slow but electric, building into something that made my knees tremble. Then, Aaron pulled back suddenly, breath ragged. I blinked, dizzy. Aaron? He stared at me, jaw tight, pupils blown wide with desire, and something dangerously close to restraint snapping. If I kiss you again, his voice was a growl buried beneath control. I won't stop. Heat flooded my cheeks. I should have looked away, should have stepped back, should have been afraid. But all I could feel was a warmth blooming under my ribs, fierce and impossible to deny. Aaron. He closed his eyes, exhaling shakily. Not like this, he whispered. Not when you're still healing. Not when I can't trust myself to be gentle. He stepped back one pace. It felt like the world moved with him, too fast, too abruptly, tugging something inside me taut. But the look in his eyes, that was not rejection. That was devotion locked inside restraint. He brushed a knuckle along my jaw again, softer this time. We'll finish this, he murmured, but not tonight. When he turned to leave, my fingers trembled with the urge to reach for him, not out of fear, not out of desperation, but because for the first time since being cast into the snow, I wanted something. I wanted him. And he wanted me back. I should have known peace couldn't last. Not in a kingdom built on rivalries. Not with bloodthorn scouts circling the borders. Not with a Luna who shouldn't exist living in the heart of Stormfell. Still, the morning it happened, I allowed myself a fragile moment of calm. The pups napped curled against my lap while I braided the smaller one's soft fur, a messy, clumsy plait that made him look like a tiny warrior from some forgotten era. He wriggled in his sleep, making a small grumble that warmed my heart in ways I didn't understand yet. That moment shattered when the door burst open. One of the guards bowed hastily. "My lady, the council has summoned the king. They demand immediate assembly." My pulse quickened. "Why?" The guard hesitated. "Because of you." My chest tightened painfully. The pups stirred at my racing heartbeat. I pressed a hand over their backs, trying to calm myself before I frightened them further. But nothing could steady me as I followed the guard through the keep, toward the war hall where Stormfell's council waited like a pack, ready to tear into whatever threat they had decided I was. The closer we came, the louder the voices grew. "Cannot keep her here. She threatens our stability. An enemy Luna under our roof. Their words slammed into me before I even crossed the threshold. I stayed in the shadows near the archway, heart pounding, every instinct begging me to flee. Instead, I pressed a palm to the cold stone and watched. The council stood in a half-circle before Arin's throne. They were older, hardened wolves, eyes sharp with suspicion and pride. Arin stood before them, not seated, but on his feet, posture rigid, jaw clenched, as if he'd been restraining his temper for longer than a heartbeat. The eldest counselor, Varric, stepped forward, voice booming. "This must end. She's an enemy, Arin." My stomach twisted. Another counselor spat, "Bloodthorn's Luna, a risk, a spy." A third growled, "She brings war to our doors." My breath hitched, not because their words were cruel, I'd heard worse, but because Arin didn't interrupt them. He stood there, silent, listening. Fear pricked at my skin like needles. What if they convinced him? What if saving me in the snow was a moment of mercy he'd now regret? What if... Varric's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. "You have endangered Stormfell," he said. "If Bloodthorn learns she lives, they will seek vengeance. They already hunt our borders. I speak for the council when I say this. Selene must be removed." Removed. Not relocated, not transferred. Removed. Which meant dead. My throat closed. Arin finally moved. It wasn't a step. It wasn't a gesture. It was an explosion of power more visceral than anything I'd ever felt. His wolf surged beneath his skin, turning the air electric. "Removed," Arin repeated, voice a low growl that vibrated against the stone walls. "Is that what you call murdering a woman under my protection?" "She is not ours," Varric argued. "She does not belong. She belongs where I say she belongs," Arin snapped. Silence. The entire council froze. Arin continued, voice sharper, colder, edged with barely contained fury. "Selene stays. But," a snarl cut the air in half, "she stays." His voice cracked with the kind of dominance that didn't come from title or training, but instinct, wolf deep, irrefutable. The torches flickered. Shadows trembled across the stone walls. Even the mountain seemed to hold its breath. A younger counselor dared to speak. "Your Majesty, emotion clouds your judgment." Arin turned his gaze on him slowly, dangerously. "My judgment," he said, voice dropping into something deadly soft, "is the reason this kingdom stands on solid ground rather than in ashes." The counselor swallowed. "If Selena remains," he whispered, trembling, "Bloodthorn will strike." Arin's eyes flashed gold. "Then let them come." Murmurs rippled, horrified and awestruck. Varric stepped forward again, trying one last time. "Are you willing to risk a war for her?" Arin didn't hesitate. "Yes." The word reverberated through the hall like thunder. I felt it in my bones, in my heartbeat, in the breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Arin stepped closer to the council, power rolling off him like a storm about to break. "If any of you," he said coldly, "challenge her place here, you challenge me." Varric stiffened. "That sounds like a threat." "It's a promise." Whispers erupted. Not agreement, not surrender, but dissent. The council fractured right there in front of him. Half bowed reluctantly, half bristled like wolves ready to bare teeth. Stormfell wasn't unified anymore. Rebellion was forming. Because of me. My heartbeat crashed like thunder in my ears. I should have felt guilt, shame, fear, and I did. But over all of it, overlaying every emotion like a second heartbeat, was something else. Arin had not only defended me, he had chosen me in front of those who advised his every move. He had risked his kingdom's stability, his political standing, his crown. For me, for the pups, for the truth he refused to silence. And when his gaze flicked to the archway, where he knew I stood hidden, even if he couldn't see me fully. His eyes softened, not with pity, with devotion. My breath caught. He didn't smile, he didn't move, but he didn't have to. The message was clear in every line of him. You stay. You are safe. You are mine to protect. And for the first time since being cast into the snow, I believed him. The day he returned, the air itself felt wrong. Too still, too sharp, too cold. Not with winter, but with memory. I felt it before the guards shouted the alarm, before the bells tolled across Stormfell's courtyard, before Arin stiffened beside me, scent sharpening with something feral. I was holding one of the pups, coaxing him to drink warm milk, when I felt the tremor inside myself, a shaking that had nothing to do with the cold. My former mate had crossed into Stormfell territory. I knew it before the doors even opened. Celine. Arin's voice was low, steady. Look at me. I tried. Gods, I tried, but the memory of teeth on my skin, of snow filling my lungs, of betrayal burning hotter than a flame, it all rose so fast I couldn't swallow it down. He's here, I whispered. Arin didn't ask how I knew. He just stood, towering, tense, eyes beginning to glow. The doors slammed open, and there he was, Alpha Kalen of the Bloodthorn Pack. My mate, my tormentor, my betrayer. The pups whimpered, instinct recoiling from the scent that used to mean home, but now meant danger. My knees nearly buckled, but I forced myself upright. I will not fall in front of him again. Arin stepped in front of me immediately, blocking Kalen's view of me, positioning himself between us like a living wall of muscle and fury. Kalen's voice filled the hall, cold and mocking. Storm fell. He drawled. I have come for what belongs to me. The words were knives, belongs to me. My pulse spiked. Old instinct screamed, lower your head, stay silent, obey. But Arin's presence behind me, solid, grounding, unyielding, kept me steady. What exactly is it you think belongs to you? Arin asked, voice venom soft. Kalen smiled, the same smile he used when he lied to me, when he convinced everyone I was fragile, unstable, unworthy. My Luna, he said, and my sons. The pups cried at the sound of his voice, shrinking behind my legs. Kalen's gaze sharpened. You see? They know they're alpha. The audacity stole my breath. Not because he said it, but because he believed it. He believed his lies. He believed his violence was authority. He believed abandonment was leadership. Arin growled, low and dangerous. You abandoned them in a blizzard. Kalen shrugged. She failed our pack. The pups were born under suspicion, traitor's blood. My heart twisted. Suspicion. Failing. Traitor. Words he'd carved into me long before he cast me into the snow. I stepped out from behind Arin. My legs shook violently, but I kept moving. Arin turned sharply. Celine. It's all right, I whispered, though nothing about this moment was all right. I stood beside Arin, just enough to be seen, not enough to be touched. Kalen's eyes widened, shock, then fury, then something uglier. You dare stand beside him? He hissed. After what you did? I swallowed hard. What I did? You birthed those pups, he spat. You brought shame to my bloodline. My nails dug into my palms. They are your pups. He bared his teeth at me. They were weakness. Arin's growl thundered through the hall. Kalen smirked at him. You keep my Luna. You keep my sons. Give them back now, and I might forgive the insult. The arrogance, the entitlement, the cruelty. But something inside me finally snapped, not with fear, but with clarity. I am not your Luna, I said. The hall fell silent. Even the torches seemed to stop flickering. Kalen's lip curled. You vowed. You tried to kill me, I said softly. My voice shook, but my words didn't. You left me to die in a blizzard. You left them to die. I looked down at the pups. Your heirs. Gasps rippled through the room. Aaron stood impossibly still beside me, a volcano waiting to erupt. Kaylin's face darkened. You were unfit. A disgrace. A Luna who questioned commands. A Luna who questioned abuse? I snapped. My heart hammered like a wild thing, but I forced the words out. You bit me. You blamed me for the birth. You told the pack I tricked you. Because the truth frightened you. He lunged forward. Aaron moved faster. One step, and the entire hall shook under the weight of his snarl. The deep, ancient sound of an alpha claiming ground, territory, and battle. Aaron's voice hit like thunder. Touch her, and I'll tear out your throat. Kaylin froze mid-step. Aaron's wolf was fully awake, barely held back by skin and bone. His eyes burned gold, power radiating off him in waves that made even seasoned warriors flinch. Kaylin tried again. She belongs to me. She belongs to no one, Aaron growled, then softer, so only I heard. Unless she chooses. My breath hitched. Kaylin's face twisted at that. This is treason, he spat. I will take back what is mine. Aaron stepped forward, shoulders broad, dominance filling the hall like a storm cloud ready to strike. You tried to kill her. You call these pups shame. His voice was razor sharp. You are no alpha, and you will never touch her again. I felt something inside me loosen, a knot I'd carried for years. Fear slipped away, bit by bit, breath by breath. Because Aaron stood like a fortress beside me. Because the pups hid behind my legs instead of his. Because for the first time, facing Kaylin, I wasn't weak. I was protected, chosen, safe, and stronger than he ever allowed me to be. I lifted my chin. You lost the right to call me Luna the moment you left. Us, in the snow. Aaron's hand brushed mine, not claiming, not pushing, simply anchoring me. Kaylin stared at me, stunned. Then Aaron delivered the final blow. If you want her, he said coldly, you'll have to take her from me. The challenge hung in the air like lightning, but Kaylin didn't step forward, because he wasn't an alpha anymore. He was just a coward exposed in the light. And I, the Luna he tried to break, stood unbroken beside the king who refused to let me fall. I didn't hear the war horns at first. I heard the pups. Their cries, sharp, frightened, instinctive, reached me from down the corridor before any bell or shout did. I ran toward them on instinct alone, heart pounding with a terror I thought I'd left behind in the blizzard. Then the ground shook. A single, earth-splitting boom. And another. Stormfell was under attack. Bloodthorn had come. I grabbed both pups, one in each arm, their tiny fingers clutching at my cloak, and stumbled back as warriors sprinted past me, weapons flashing in the torchlight. A soldier shouted, "Bloodthorn wolves at the gate! Form ranks!" My breath froze. They came for me. They came for them. And Kaylin. The man who had abandoned us in the snow was back to finish what he started. Aaron appeared at the far end of the corridor, eyes glowing gold so bright they lit the hallway like a second sunrise. His wolf was at the surface, rage and protectiveness coiled together. "Celine," he barked, striding toward me. "You need to get to the nursery." "No," I whispered. His expression flickered, shock, confusion, denial. But I lifted my chin. "I won't hide," I said, voice trembling but steady. "Not again. Not while they're here." He stared at me for a long heartbeat, breathing hard. Then his jaw tightened with something fierce, something like pride. "Stay behind me," he ordered, voice low and guttural, "and don't let them out of your sight." The battle thundered through the keep, snarls, shouts, the splintering of wood, the crush of stone. The air vibrated with violence. Aaron shifted before my eyes. Black fur, enormous frame, eyes blazing sun gold. The Stormfell Alpha King in his true form. He let out a roar so powerful it rattled my bones, then launched himself down the stairs toward the main gate, wolves flooding behind him. I followed as far as I dared, keeping to the shadows with the pups pressed against me. But Stormfell corridors twisted like living veins. Hiding would mean blindness. I knew Bloodthorn tactics. I knew Kalen's cruelty better than anyone. I knew how they ambushed, how they flanked, how they always sent a second wave behind the first. A Stormfell guard nearly collided with me. "Milady, you can't be here." "There will be an attack from the West Terrace," I said quickly. "They always strike twice, and they always come for the children first." The man paled, then sprinted to warn the others. Another roar echoed through the keep, Arin's, wild and furious. I hurried after it, clutching the pups so tightly one whimpered into my neck. My palms were sweating, heart thundering, but I kept going. I would not let Bloodthorn take them. Not again. Not ever. The great hall doors lay shattered as I reached them. The scene inside stole my breath. Wolves everywhere, black, gray, russet, bodies colliding, jaws snapping, claws tearing. Blood smeared the marble floor in long arcs. The scent of battle was thick, suffocating. And in the center, Arin, towering, ferocious, unstoppable. He tore through attackers with brutal precision, not savagely, but surgically. Every strike was a promise. No one touches her. No one touches them. He saw me, even mid-battle, even drenched in blood and rage. He saw me, and something inside him snapped tighter, fiercer. He fought harder, faster, with the kind of desperation only born from love, even if he hadn't yet spoken the word. A shadow lunged for me from the right, a Bloodthorn warrior. I twisted aside, clutching the pups, but he grabbed the edge of my cloak. Before I could scream, a blur of black fur slammed into him, Arin, merciless, ripping the man away and crushing him into the wall. He shifted mid-motion, skin replacing fur, and stood between me and danger, chest heaving, voice a gravel-rough snarl. "Stay behind me," he growled. "I will not lose you." A crash shook the hall. Kalen entered. He looked wild, eyes red-rimmed, clothes torn, face twisted with rage. "Celine!" he roared. "Those pups are mine." I flinched but didn't step back. Arin did. He stepped forward. This time, Kalen didn't speak. He attacked. The two alphas collided like storms, teeth bared, fists flying, claws shredding skin. Their wolves snapped through their human forms, each strike fueled by history, hatred, and the truth Kalen had tried to bury. Arin fought like the world depended on this moment, like I depended on this moment, and I did. But Kalen fought like a cornered animal, ruthless, frantic, spilling his own blood without care. The fight crashed through the hall, overturned tables, shattered columns. The pups cried in my arms, but I held them close, whispering their names like a spell. Arin landed a blow that sent Kalen sprawling. Kalen staggered up, eyes burning, and lunged at me. Arin's roar shook the entire keep. He reached us in a blur, grabbing Kalen mid-lunge, slamming him to the ground with a sickening crack. Silence. A breathless, frozen silence. Bloodthorn warriors faltered. Stormfell wolves raised their heads. Kalen's body lay still. Arin rose slowly, chest heaving, skin torn and bleeding, but alive, victorious, unbroken. He looked at me, at the pups, at the woman who had once curled in the snow waiting to die, now standing in the center of the hall, holding the air she'd saved. His voice was rough, torn, reverent. "It's over, Celine." I exhaled shakily. For the first time in years, the air didn't taste like fear. Stormfell stood, Bloodthorn fell, and I, the Luna who should have died, still stood breathing, still standing beside the king who refused to let me fall. The hall was still humming with the aftermath of battle when Arin turned toward me. Bodies had been carried away. Blood was being scrubbed from the stone. The pups slept in the healer's arms at the far end, wrapped in warm blankets, safe for the first time since their birth. But all I could see was him, Arin, battered, bruised, chest streaked with blood, standing tall at the center of Stormfell's throne room, every breath he took vibrating with the weight of the night, with the weight of what he had chosen. Me. I didn't realize I was shaking until he walked toward me, slow and deliberate, the crowd parting like he carried a storm in his footsteps. Maybe he did. Maybe he always would. He stopped in front of me, eyes still glowing like wildfire. "Celine," he said softly. My heartbeat stuttered. No one had ever spoken my name softly before. No one had ever spoken it like it was something precious. He reached for my wrist. I instinctively flinched, not because I feared him, but because years of pain had trained my body to shrink from any touch that felt final, binding, inescapable. He froze. His hand hovered, fingers trembling, as if he feared my fear worse than any scar on his body. "You're safe," he said quietly. "Look at me." I lifted my eyes. Arin nodded once, slow, as if anchoring both of us. "I'm not marking you as property," he murmured. "I'm marking you as protected." His thumb gently brushed the inside of my wrist, and for the first time, I didn't flinch. I leaned in. Arin inhaled shakily, the tension in his shoulders breaking. His wolf surfaced, golden flickers in his eyes, the faint growl rumbling in his chest. But not the growl I feared from Kaelin all those years. Not dominance, not threat. Recognition, claiming, reverence. He lifted my wrist higher, revealing the pale skin that had once been covered in bruises and restraints, and claw-shaped marks from a mate who never saw me. Now it was exposed willingly, to a mate who saw everything. Arin pressed his lips to my pulse, a soft brush, a vow disguised as a kiss. Then he whispered, voice low enough only I could hear, "You are mine, Celine." The words didn't chain me, they freed me. His teeth grazed my skin, not enough to break it, just enough to awaken something old and primal inside me. Energy crackled, a sound like a spark meeting tinder. Then light, glowing, silver, and blue, erupted from beneath his touch. A Stormfell sigil burned into existence on my wrist, swirling like a constellation settling into skin. Gasps filled the hall. Arin didn't look away from me. "This," he said, voice ringing through the throne room, "is the sigil of Stormfell." His fingers traced the luminous mark. "A protection rune," he continued, "a vow written in blood and magic. It means no wolf, no council, no enemy can touch you without answering to me." He turned, pulling me gently forward until I stood beside him, not behind, not hidden, not trembling in the shadows. Right beside him, facing all of Stormfell. Warriors, nobles, healers, council members, every eye in the hall fixed on us. Even the children in the balconies leaned forward, hushed and wide-eyed. Arin's voice amplified as he addressed them. "This woman," he said, gesturing toward me, "saved your future heirs." The room rippled with whispers. She shielded them with her own body. She carried them through a storm that would have killed full-grown wolves. She survived betrayal, exile, and death itself. His chest rose with the next words, "And she saved me." A hush fell, deep, startled, reverent. Arin stepped closer, our shoulders brushing, his warmth grounding me. "Because of her," he said, "Stormfell stands unbroken." I felt heat sting my eyes. Me, a Luna who once curled in the snow praying for death, a woman cast out by her mate, an enemy to this kingdom, This kingdom now stood in silence because of me. Arin turned to the court fully and let his power sweep through the hall like a breaking storm. "She is not an enemy," he growled. "She is my queen." The silence that followed wasn't disbelief anymore. It was acceptance, awe, submission. Some wolves even bowed. To me, to the woman they had once feared. I stood taller. For the first time in my life, my spine didn't bend under the weight of survival. It lifted under the weight of sovereignty. Arin turned back toward me, eyes softening as his hand reached for mine. "You walk beside me now," he murmured. "Not as a prisoner, not as a burden, as the woman who changed my fate." I swallowed hard. "And you," he added, voice dropping to a low rumble only I could feel, "are no longer the Luna they cast out." His hand cupped my cheek gently. "You are Stormfell's queen." I lifted my chin, feeling the mark on my wrist pulse with warmth. Not pain, not fear. Recognition, rebirth, identity. For the first time, the hall didn't feel too big for me. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt alive. I felt chosen. Arin's thumb brushed my cheek one last time before he whispered, "You are mine, Celine." And for the first time, I knew I belonged. The sunlight in Stormfell felt different now. Warmer, softer. Less like a warning and more like a welcome. Weeks had passed since the battle, enough time for the walls to be rebuilt, the wounded to heal, and the kingdom to breathe again. Enough time for me to stop waking in the night expecting claws, expecting punishment, expecting to be dragged back into the snow where my story once ended. It didn't end there. It began. I stood at the top of the grand staircase in the great hall, my hand resting lightly on the railing carved with ancient wolf sigils. Below me, the court shimmered with silks, armor, jewels, and laughter. Real laughter, not the tight, fearful kind I had once heard echoing through Bloodthorn's halls. Stormfell was celebrating. Not just victory, rebirth. Arin walked beside me, tall and commanding, his presence like a living storm. But not the kind that destroyed. The kind that finally brings rain after a drought. And at our feet, the pups. My pups now. Not by blood. Not by birth. But by bond. By choice. By love. Little Alder toddled clumsily, determined to descend the stairs alone, one pudgy hand reaching for the next step. His brother Rowan clung to my gown and peered down with wide eyes as if the world was too much and too bright. "They'll fall," I murmured softly. Arin chuckled at my side, voice warm. "I will catch them." I smiled. He always did. We began our descent slowly, the court parting like the tide before us. Some bowed their heads. Others pressed a hand to their heart in the Stormfell greeting. None looked at me with suspicion anymore. Not one. It still startled me. Once, every step I took was shadowed by whispers, doubts, fear. People rarely spoke to me directly. They spoke about me, around me, past me. Now they looked at me like I was something sacred. Because of what I'd survived. Because of what I'd protected. Because of who I'd become. We stepped into the center of the hall, surrounded by the soft hum of voices. I heard it before I saw who said it. A whisper traveling like a breeze through silk banners. The Luna they tried to kill became the king's heart. I froze. Not from fear. From truth. Arin's hand found the small of my back, his thumb brushing gently. "They see you," he murmured near my ear. "All of you." I swallowed, looking at the pups sitting proudly on a fur-covered bench, tiny crowns made of braided branches set crookedly on their heads. A healer fussed over them. A warrior crouched nearby, letting them tug at his braids. One pup shoved a berry into the other's mouth. They giggled. The entire hall seemed to melt around them. I had once laid my body over them in the snow, believing cold death was inevitable and warm safety was a myth. Now here they were, alive, adored, cherished by a kingdom that had nearly destroyed itself, and here I was, not hiding, not trembling, not bracing for cruelty, alive, adored, cherished. Arin leaned down, his breath warm against my temple. He pressed a kiss there, slow, reverent, grounding. My eyes fluttered shut. His voice, low enough for only me to hear, rumbled through my bones. You didn't just survive the blizzard. My breath caught. You survived fate. His hand slid around my waist, pulling me just slightly closer. And you found me. Something inside me softened. Something that had been clenched for years, frozen for even longer. A knot of fear, grief, shame, and old wounds loosened, then unraveled completely. I turned to him. He didn't look away from my scars. He had never looked away from them. He looked into them, through them, as if they were the map that had led me here, led me to him. I placed my palm over his heart, feeling the steady beat beneath my fingertips. Warm, strong, alive. Maybe I didn't find you, I whispered. Maybe we walked out of our storms at the same time. He smiled, the kind of smile that made kings seem human and mates feel immortal. Below us, Alder toppled backward into Rowan. They both squealed. The warrior panicked. The healer sighed dramatically. The court laughed. Arin and I both turned toward them. The pups scrambled to their feet and ran toward us, tiny legs pumping, little faces bright as sunrise. Up, Alder demanded, arms raised. I bent and scooped him into my arms. Rowan tugged on Aaron's pant leg, demanding the same. Arin lifted him effortlessly, settling the boy against his shoulder. And just like that, we were a family standing in the heart of a kingdom. A family that shouldn't have existed. A queen who shouldn't have survived. A king who shouldn't have cared. Two pups who should have died in the snow. Yet here we were, together. I looked at Arin again. I'm home, I whispered. He nodded slowly, eyes warm as firelight. You are, Celine. Then he touched the Stormfell sigil on my wrist, the mark that had once burned like destiny and now felt like belonging, and murmured, forever.